Hi everyone, welcome to Daisy Stalls. So many of you know I love taking pictures of my model horses outdoors. However, I live in a climate where the summers are short and the winters are long, and that makes finding locations for photography very difficult for the majority of the time. So today, to fix this issue, I will be making a miniature version of a summery pasture, and hopefully it will turn out close to as realistic as the real thing. For the base, I'll be using plywood from the same sheet as I used for all of my other dioramas, which is about 3 mm thick. I had to put some thought into the size of the base, as I want it to be as small as possible so it doesn't take up so much space in storage, but I still want it to be big enough so I can easily take pictures of it without the side edges being in frame, thus making it look unrealistic. I ended up settling on 36 x 25 centimeters, which will also fit perfectly into my display shelf. I start by deciding and marking out how far in I want the fence to go, where I want the gate, etc. Deciding on the right measurements for miniatures can be a challenge, but a nifty trick I picked up is using scale. My dolls and horses are about 1:17 scale, which means that they are 17 times smaller than the real thing. For example, if I'm wondering how wide my gate should be, I can find this answer for real-life gates on Google. Then if I divide that measurement by 17, I will get the right measurements for my scale. Now, I've decided on all the measurements, but I feel I still need some inspiration. So I'm going to head outdoors to take a look at the wilderness and hopefully also find some natural materials I can use. We parked by this place where there had been dumped a bunch of trees, and I found some old looking sticks that had turned a lovely gray shade over time, which was exactly what I was looking for. I collected some rocks in different shapes and sizes. And there's my mom.
She's an icon, she's a legend, and she is the moment.
I also tried to gather as much inspiration from the surrounding area as I could, paying attention to the smaller details that you maybe wouldn't normally notice. With newly gathered materials and inspiration, I'm feeling more ready to actually start forming the diorama, starting with a stream running through the pasture. I sketch out how I want it to look on my base, then I will be using paper clay to build up the terrain around the stream. Once I'm finished forming the stream, I let it air dry, and now it's time to cover the ground of this diorama with something that will hopefully look like earth. I wasn't totally sure how to do this, but I gathered some materials, including the contents of tea bags, sawdust, and sand. I thought the different colors and textures would make it look more realistic, so I mixed them all up and bound it together using some brown paint. But oh, this paint tube is totally gonna poof on me. Oh, yep, I knew it. I start mixing it all together, adding more water as necessary, and I end up with a mixture that doesn't look very appealing, but I guess dirt doesn't really look appealing, so it's probably good. I start applying it to my base, though it was really hard to actually spread around, so I ended up having to use my hands. Okay, so I tried to make the dirt surface, but I don't like how it looks. It doesn't really look like dirt in the way that I want it to. So what I think I'm going to do is just use real dirt. I'm gonna try it, but I need to try to remove this first, so we'll see. So I managed to get most of the dirt off. Let's go collect some actual dirt from the garden. I was absolutely not sure if this was gonna work either, but it was my best idea, so better just try. To eliminate any germs or bugs, I'm baking the soil at 150 C for about 30 minutes. Once the time was up, I took it out and decided to put it through a sieve as I only really wanted the smallest granules. But pro tip, you should do this outside. This was very dusty. I ended up with this, and to attach it to my base, I'm painting it with some brown acrylic paint. And before it dries, I sprinkle on a layer of the dirt. The paint kind of holds it down while I spread it around, but to really anchor it and seal it in, I'm going to use a 50-50 mixture of wood glue and water, which I put into a spray bottle. I gave it a pretty generous coating of this, and it was looking really good, so I just continued to cover the rest of the board with the same process. You know, I'm trying to create the look of dirt using dirt, so it kind of would be hard to mess up, huh? I also use my paint spatula to smooth down the surface where the stream goes. I kept in mind where the gate will be, and just after I sprayed that area with the glue mixture, I took out one of my models that I don't really care about and used it to create some hoof prints in the dirt. Here you can see it after it's dry, and I'm so excited about this detail. I think it looks awesome. I gave the whole thing a thorough second coat of the glue mixture just to make sure that everything is nice and sealed in. Alright, the ground finally looks like and is dirt, so now I'm going to shift my focus to the fence poles. I flip the base over, and using the measurements from before, I mark out where I want the fence poles to be, and I'm using this little manual drill to drill on the marks drawn. I'm then using these thin metal nails to insert through each of the holes, and these will act as anchors for the poles. I'll be using those sticks I found earlier, and I'll shorten them using some movie magic. I drill into one end of all the poles that I need, and they end up sitting very snugly on the nails. Originally, I had put in anchors for 5 poles, but it ended up looking too crowded, I thought, so I ended up with only 3. Anyways, now let's get to the more fun part, which is actually adding the terrain. So I start to add in the rocks that I collected earlier. Now next up is adding the grass, and to say that I've been dreading it is an understatement because I'll be using this thing. This is a static grass applicator, and some of you might remember I have used it before in Perry's video. I didn't really think it turned out super good that time, so I was nervous now, but I gotta just bite the bullet. So I'm going to test out some 2mm grass on a corner of the diorama. It ended up looking pretty good, but maybe a bit too well kept for my old looking pasture. So I thought I would try to add the illusion of dead grass using thread. This one has fibers that are about the same thickness as the green grass I was using. I cut it into pieces that are about 2mm long, and to really separate the fibers, I put it through a sieve. Then I was just going to put this into my grass applicator, and I ended up just dumping it all over my pants. I tried my best to scoop it back in, but they got literally everywhere, so I called in Dad for backup and he gave me a lint roller, thank gosh. Alright, back to business. I water out the glue a little bit this time to make it easier to paint on. Then I apply the mixture of dead and green grass over almost all of the diorama, skipping some of the parts where grass maybe wouldn't naturally grow. For example, around the gate, there would probably be a lot of traffic back and forth, and the grass probably wouldn't grow very well there. Between each application, I shake off the excess grass onto some paper so I can collect it and reuse it. In the areas where I want the grass to be more sparse, I add spots of glue to make the transition from grass to dirt a bit less harsh and more realistic. This is how it looks so far, and I imagine this is the grass that the horses have eaten the most, so it's really short, but I do want some variation. So I'll be adding some green 5mm grass, as well as this mixture of beige, brown, and green shades. I started to hesitantly dot on the glue in smaller patches, though I actually ended up doing way bigger areas with this grass eventually, as I got a bit more confident with the tool as I went on with the project. I also apply some 12mm grass, and it's worth noting that the taller the grass strands are, the more they want to adhere to gravity and fall down, so I keep the applicator a bit closer for these longer ones, and also for a few more seconds so the static electricity can do its thing and keep them upright. I glued some of the tallest grass to the bottom of the fence poles, and so far I think we're looking pretty good. I definitely want my pasture to look like it's been there for a while, so I looked up some pictures of lichen and start to paint the rocks accordingly using acrylic paint. It's a pretty interesting experience doing projects like these, where I'm trying to recreate things that I often come across, but as Sherlock Holmes would say, I see but do not observe. I see that rock or that tree or whatever with my eyes, but I don't really notice it. But ever since I started on this project, I've been trying to absorb as much inspiration from nature when I'm outside, and it's given me a new appreciation for little random things, which sounds kind of preachy, but it's true, okay? It's lovely. Alright, the time has come to fill this stream with water, or in this case resin, but I'm kind of getting flashbacks to the last time I tried to use it. I obviously have to block off both of those open ends. I thought tape would be my best bet. I started slowly pouring in the resin, then I walked away for 24 hours for it to cure, and everything was fine. Well, actually... Oh my... Shit. What the heck do I do? Oh my gosh. I was just cleaning up and, that's weird, my drill won't budge. I need to tell my parents it's their drill. I've stuck it to my desk. Who does that? So to try to avoid another situation where I glue a random object to my desk using resin, I'll be using hot glue and cellophane to block off each end of the stream this time, and not tape. Once both ends are blocked off and hopefully pretty secure, I can get out the resin, which I don't really like using, but it does look really good, and I think it will go better this time. I want the stream to look like it has running water, so as I am curing it with the UV lamp, I'll be constantly stirring it around with the wooden dowel, and I'm hoping this will give some nice texture and give the effect I want. It was all going pretty well until I noticed the resin starting to leak out of one of the ends. I quickly moved the lamp over to cure the resin so it wouldn't run out, and the crisis was averted, luckily. I do the last bit of curing and stirring. Then, just to make sure it's hardened all the way through, I decided to utilize the free UV rays from the sun. The running water effect turned out a lot better than I had dared to hope for. I actually quite like it. The cellophane and hot glue also successfully prevented any disasters from happening. Though the hot glue did rip some of the paint off, I would gladly have that instead of resin everywhere. I'll need to apply a layer of gloss varnish to the stream, as for some reason the resin always dries with a sticky layer on top. I'm not sure why, but this fixes it at least. It's really starting to come together more and more, but it seems obvious I should have some sort of fence between those fence poles. I had actually bought this mesh for that exact purpose, but I must have ordered the wrong one or something because this one is way out of scale. The wire is way too thick and the squares are way too big, so that won't work. I do have this mesh though from another project. The squares are obviously too small, but I might be able to change that. I measure and cut out the pieces I need. I'm actually going to purposely unravel a couple of rows on all the edges because I need some way to secure them so they won't unravel uncontrollably. I very quickly realized there is no fast way to do this, so I'll be twisting the wire like this all around the whole thing, though I'll only be doing every third wire, which I'll explain why in a bit. Alright, now that all the wires are secured, let me explain to you why I only bothered with every third wire and not all of them. So this mesh has pretty small squares, but I obviously want to make them bigger. So I'm planning on that each 3x3 square will become one square, which means that this, and this wire will be removed, while this and this wire will stay. This pattern will continue on the entirety of the mesh, and I'll also have to secure where the wire crosses over each other so it doesn't slide around, so let's start with that. I'll be using some very thin wire that I cut a small piece of and bent in half. Then I place that wire right above that cross section that I'm aiming to secure. Then I pull both of the ends out like this. I'm not completely sure how to explain it, but hopefully you can see what I mean. I then just twist the ends together and snip them off, and one is secured, and probably over 100 to go. You may think that this would be absolutely torturous to work with, but to be honest, I kinda really liked it. During the time I was working on this, there were some very turbulent things happening around me, and just having this mindless work where I could just shut off my brain for a bit, it felt really good. It was kind of therapeutic, and I think I needed it. Once all those cross sections are done, it's time to snip away those unsecured wires. And you best believe I was double, triple, triple checking I wasn't cutting the wrong wires. I think I was feeling the pressure of a bomb diffuser. I got my first poke. I don't think it will be the last one either. These wires are so sharp. After many hours of work, I can finally see the result, and I'm super happy with it. I think it was worth spending this time on it because I think it looks really good. I don't really feel like making the second piece I need, so I'll simplify things by using movie magic. The Pasture will definitely need a gate as well, and staying true to myself, let's make it look old. I'm using a watered out acrylic paint mixture to stain some balsa wood pieces in a cool gray shade. I'm aiming for a similar-ish color as the fence poles have. I assemble it together using wood glue, and I found using the grid on my craft mat really helpful to keep things straight, though it probably wouldn't be the worst thing if things were a bit crooked. Now that it's assembled, I'm of course going to add more details, starting with adding the illusion that this has been put together with nails and not glue. The balsa wood is very soft, so I can easily make some indentations using a blunt needle. Then I'll be gluing one of these small metal studs into each of the indents. I also paint them to make them look rusty. And I added a bit more weathering and dirt using brown and black pastels. Now for the hinges. I made this one out of some metal from a soda can, and I'll first be gluing it onto the gate. Then I'll actually be using these miniature nails, which are just sewing pins that I cut to size. I press them through the holes of my hinges, which doesn't take much effort because the balsa wood is very soft, so the glue was definitely necessary, but they should add a bit of strength, and I also just think they look nice. They of course can't stay shiny like this though, they must look old like the rest of the stuff. I really did like how the rocks ended up looking with the painted on lichen, so I added some to the gate as well. But who's that making a ruckus in the background? Ah, of course, it's Millie the cat assistant, and she's demanding cuddles as always. Anyway, the lichen ended up being a really nice touch, and here you can really see the difference with it and without it. I of course did paint both sides though, and I also added some to the fence poles to make them match. Now to make the second part of the hinge, which will be attached to the pole. I actually used a piece of a miniature hinge I had from before, and I trimmed it to get this shape. I then bent it 90 degrees like this, and I'll be attaching 2 of these to the pole using these tiny screws. These are actually meant for repairing glasses and stuff like that, but I thought they would be absolutely perfect for miniature projects like this. Once both of them are secured onto the pole, I'm going to superglue in another one of those screws onto the other hole like this. Then I can join together both hinge pieces. And look at that, the gate swings. That's pretty cool. I really wanted to make a functional lock for the gate as well, so I ended up with this spring-loaded design. This pin keeps the gate closed, and you have to pull it back to open it. The materials I used were a sewing pin, some metal from a soda can, wire, and a few more of the screws. One last addition to the fence will be some barbed wire. I fold the length of wire in half and start twisting the ends together. And once about 1 centimeter of it is twisted, I'll be adding my first barb. I cut a small piece of the same type of wire and create a little hook like this, which I place right by the twisted part. Now, while holding in place the short end of the barb, I'll be wrapping the long end around the twisted part about 3 times. Then I can just trim off the excess and I have a finished barb. Now it's just a matter of continuing to twist the wire and add more barbs until I am satisfied with the length. Of course, I'll give these and the mesh the rust treatment. Now the only thing left to do on the fence is to assemble it. I made some fencing staples out of wire to secure the mesh to the poles. I did the same thing to attach the barbed wire to the poles. Now I can finally place the finished fence onto the diorama, and it's starting to really come together now. I do want the greenery to be much more abundant than this though, so that's what I'll be shifting my focus to next. I'll be using this twine that has pretty thick and stiff fibers. I apply some glue to it about 2 centimeters in from the end. Then I cut it off so the glue ends up on the middle of the piece of twine. Then once it's dry, I cut it right on the glued part, and I end up with 2 tufts that are glued in one end. If I unravel and kind of fluff it up, I get a pretty good base for making several types of shrubs, but this time I'll be making heather. So I paint it with acrylic, and once that's dry, I paint it with glue. I'll then be dipping it in this green scatter material that is designed specifically for making dioramas like this. Now the bush itself is done, but I want it to be flowering. So to make the flowers, I'll be using a sponge. Importantly, it's the one that dries and becomes really hard and not the plasticky ones. I dyed it purple by soaking it in watered out acrylic paint. Then once it's dry, I'll be grading it to create the flower flocking. I apply some more glue to the tips of the branches, then sprinkle on some of the flowers, and it turns out looking pretty realistic. I ended up becoming really good at making these because I had to make so many. I mean, I thought I had to make a bunch, but I probably ended up making 4 times as many as I thought. Next, I want to make some spruce trees, so I start to make the skeleton using wire. Once the base is formed, I paint it brown, and I end up making several of these in different life stages. They do look a little naked like this though, so to add their needles, I'll be once again using the static grass applicator. I attach my tree base onto the alligator clip, which is attached to the applicator, as this is the positive end and the grass will want to fall towards it. After applying some glue, I start to cover it with the grass. I had absolutely no idea that could happen, and it scared the life out of me. The tree turned out really good though, so I guess I just have to not hold it as close to the mesh next time. There's a reason I don't like to work with these electrical tools, alright? They pull the most unexpected stuff on you and it's scary, okay? But I gotta say, at least this time, it did produce really nice results. I found these teeny tiny flowers in the garden, which I dried in sand, and I'll be giving them a sturdier stem using the same twine as I used for the heather. I also made some very fine flocking by cutting up some soft thread, and I glue that to some more pieces of that thick twine to make some tall grass. Now I think I have most of the pieces I want, so I'm going to finally start gluing stuff to the diorama. We're very close to done now, and only the little finishing touches remain. One of them being this little robin I thought would be cute sitting on the fence. Whee! I also really wanted to make some horseshoes that got thrown and just ended up around the pasture. I'll be making them out of wire, and I fine-tuned the shape to one of my models. This is actually a future project. I bet some of you recognize her. I continue by starting to hammer the horseshoes until they are nice and evenly flat like this. It would be terribly off-brand to let these stay silver, so I'm going to put them into a mixture of vinegar and salt for a few minutes. Then after letting them dry overnight, they turn nice and rusty. This time it's actual real rust. I hang them on the gate, as I imagine they would be hung in real life as well if you found a random shoe laying around in the pasture. I also added a rusty hook to hang a worn lead rope and halter on. I created this rusty bucket out of paper actually, and high-key I'm really proud of it. With the last details added, the diorama is finally complete. It's officially fall, and the season of photography difficulties comes along with it, so I really get to put my diorama to the test. It feels so good to finally be done with this project. I actually worked on it for 3 whole months, which is also why I haven't posted in over 3 months. When starting on this project, I actually thought it would be more relaxed and that it wouldn't take that long, but I think I grossly underestimated how much new stuff I'd had to learn. When doing customs and stuff, I'm usually in my comfort zone, but with this, there was so much new stuff I'd never done before. And of course, I wanted everything to be as good as they possibly could get, so the learning curve was steep and I took my time, so 3 months later, it's done. I am really happy with the result though, and it turned out pretty close to what I hoped it would look like. I must say I am a bit sick of staring at it though, so maybe ask me in a couple months and I'll be even more happy with it. If you're a subscriber who's been waiting for a video for 3 months now, then thanks for being patient with me, and I hope this video lived up to your expectations. And if you're a new viewer, then please do consider subscribing for more content like this, and I'll try to not make it 3 months until I post again. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again, hopefully pretty soon. Bye!